Hey everybody, welcome into this Adobe Photoshop tutorial. My name is Nathaniel Dodson from tutvid.com, and today we're going to take a look at 5 different tips and tricks in Photoshop that I think you ought to know. Some really helpful stuff that has to do with select and mask and smart objects, and just a couple other things that I think that you will find helpful. Today's video is brought to us by my good friends at Squarespace.com. I got a little cheat sheet here so I can remember what to say. This video is brought to us as much by my good friends at Squarespace.com. Oh yes, if you're in the market for a new website, go to Squarespace.com/tutvid, where you can use the promo code tutvid to get a nice little discount. They got a lot of great stuff over there, so if you need a domain, a website, an online store, anything like that, check them out. Squarespace.com/tutvid. There's a link down in the bio. If you support them, guys, they support this channel. They help me do what I do. So if you need a website, it would be super cool if you would choose Squarespace as your website provider. Let's jump into Photoshop and check this thing out. All right, so I have a nice little mix of tips that I want to share with you today here in Photoshop. A couple that are longer tips and tricks, and a couple that are really quick and easy. And the first one is more of the quick and easy one. We can go to View and turn on our rulers. And our rulers obviously show the unit of measure. And we can always right-click on the ruler and change the unit of measure. So if everything in your document is changing based upon inches rather than pixels or centimeters or points or picas or percentages, whatever you want to work with, you right-click on your rulers, you can change it quick and easy, and I can go to pixels. You can see my ruler updates. And not only that, but even when I drag out a selection, see that little, the little kind of marker there that's telling me, hey, there's width, there's height? That also will change as you change your unit of measure. And also, I'd be remiss if I don't add here in the info panel, this number, width and height of the current selection or object, that is displayed in whatever your preferred method of selection is. See, now it's 4.7 inches and 2.9 inches rather than all of the pixels. So a nice quick little thing there that you can do with the ruler in Photoshop. It's really helpful and just a nice thing to know how to do. All right, the next thing I want to show you is the path operations when you're working with shapes. This is really important. It's kind of tricky, but it's really, really important and super useful. I'm going to grab the rectangle tool here, and let's say we want to create sort of a Polaroid frame type effect around the Eiffel Tower here in the middle of our photo. Right? First thing I'll do, I'll just set my fill to, let's say, a solid white, and I'm going to get rid of the stroke here, and I'll just drag out kind of maybe more of a rectangle shape, hold down my space bar, and move my shape into place, just like that. You can see we're covering up the Eiffel Tower. A couple things are going to happen here. If I just drag out another shape, by the way, I'm using the rectangle tool and I'm drawing shapes, but this does work with paths as well, but I'm just drawing a shape. If I draw out another shape, you can see here in our layers panel, we've made a totally new shape. That's not always how we want to work with this. Maybe we want to add to this shape. Maybe we want to draw a square like this, right? And this would end up being our cutout. But you can see, because I did nothing, I just drew a square or a rectangle, it just added a new layer. If you hold down Shift and drag out a new rectangle, you want to hold down Shift before you begin drawing. It's going to constrain you to a perfect square, but as soon as you begin dragging out, you can just let go of square. You can see the little plus icon remains there next to my little selection, and we can add to our shape. You can see here we still only have one rectangle. It's 2 paths. If I grab my black arrow, the path selection tool, I can select this path and move it around. See, now I've got a second square. I still have the second square here, but it's just sort of stacked on top of our underlying square. And then I can select the outermost path as well. Here's where path operations becomes really valuable. When you have 2 paths or 2 shapes here on one sort of shape layer, you can allow them to interact with each other using this little drop-down menu here. These are our path operations. We have combined shapes. We could go subtract front shape, which is going to punch a hole in it. That's kind of the effect we want, right? What we can do is we can line this up as best we can. We can even hit Command or Control T and free transform. Maybe make the shape a little bit bigger, and it's going to expand the amount that's being cut out. Use our arrow keys and nudge it exactly into shape. We could move it off just like that, and just cut a chunk out of the corner. I'm going to hit Command or Control Z a couple times just to undo that. You can also do stuff in here like only save the intersecting shape areas, which what that's going to do is you can see here only the areas where our paths overlap get saved. I'm actually going to undo that a couple times. And then we also have the exclude overlapping shape areas. And this isn't going to change anything because it's still going to cut a hole where our square is. But where you'll see the change is if we move it off to the side, we're still able to see this portion of our little rectangle, but obviously where they overlap is disappearing. So a ton of stuff you can do, and if you select both your paths like this, and you decide, you know what, this is the shape that I want, I like the way this looks, I can merge my shape components, just going to merge them into one sort of compound path here, and we'll have a nice little shape to play with. We can pull it around, readjust it here in our document as we wish. This works with all the shape tools, guys. You can do it with the ellipse, polygon, you can do it with the pen tool, quite frankly. Anything that's going to draw and work with a path, you can use these path operations. They're super duper useful. Don't sleep on them. It's something that can be really, really helpful when you're working on building out complex shapes in Photoshop. Okay, so now that we have the shape, let's say we want to change the color of it. In fact, let's add some text beneath it that just says Paris, right? So I'm going to say Paris. maybe I'll say Paris, France, right? I'll leave that, and I'm going to drag this underneath and just sort of center it up. Let's say we want to change the color of this. We want it to match maybe the sky out here. So I'll grab my eyedropper tool, which is right here, and I'll sample from the sky, get that color. And you can fill any text or shape layer just by using the hotkey Option-Delete. That would be Alt-Backspace on the PC. So here for the text, I actually want the text to be maybe a lighter yellow color, something like that, more of an orange color. Option-Delete, you can see I have the text selected. Boom, it just fills that in. Then, because this is a shape layer, I can select, let's go with that darker sort of mango peachy color, and I can fill that in. Maybe actually I want everything to be a lot lighter. Maybe I want both of them to have this super light yellow color. And you can just very, very quickly go and change up the color of shapes and text using that hotkey. Just set your foreground color to whatever you want to fill it with, and then just Option-Delete, Alt-Backspace, and you can fill any text or shape you like. Alrighty, let's take a quick break from this video. I want to once again show some love to our sponsor today, Squarespace. Squarespace provides the most beautiful and easy-to-use websites you can have set up and running in no time flat. That's really fast, last I checked. If you want a portfolio, a blog, maybe a full e-commerce store, or all of the above, you can do them quickly and easily with, you guessed it, Squarespace. I've had my own personal photography site with Squarespace for years. I say it all the time. I love it. It's so easy to update and just push things around, make changes. It's really fast. It's easy. It's a total breeze. So go to squarespace.com/tutvid. You can get a free trial. No credit card is required to get yourself set up and started. And when you're ready to launch your website, just go ahead and use the coupon code TUTVID. That's TUTVID to save 10% on your first website. Check them out. Show them some love. And once again, Squarespace, thank you so much for supporting this channel. Guys, let's get back to the video, back to the good stuff, back to the stuff that we really want. Unless, of course, you want a website. Then you want Squarespace. But for now, back to Photoshop. All right, so this next little technique or trick is really, really cool. You have the ability to change all of the colors in your document that are associated with different shapes very, very simply. The way you would do this is grab your rectangle tool or any shape tool. I prefer to use a shape tool because I can just draw a shape and it's very easy to change the color of it later. I would draw out a square just like I have this kind of reddish square here. So I've got this orange square. I would right click on that layer and convert it to a smart object. And then I would just rename this master color or something like that, or master color 1 if you've got a few different colors you want to be able to change like this. You'll see exactly how this works in a second. I'm going to delete this because I already have my smart object. And what I need to do with this smart object is paste the color in over this bit of text and this button. So I'm going to grab my move tool, hit the letter V, and I'm going to command or control click on that text, and there's the text layer. What I need to do is alt or option click and drag a copy of this smart object out. You can alt or option drag or just hit command or control J and drag the copy down, and then we want to clip this color to this text. So what I'm going to do is drag that red square down. I'm going to cover up my text like this, hit Command or Control T, just make sure it's totally covering the text, just kind of something like that. And then the hotkey to clip to the layer beneath is Command Option G. That's Control Alt G on PC. It doesn't look like anything changed, but I'll show you why this is valuable in a second. Let's do the same thing here for our button. So Command or Control J to duplicate that. Command or Control click on the button. There's the background button. So I'm going to drag this down, 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 down. So we drop that color right above the button. I'm going to drag it down now, and I'm just going to position it over the button. Make sure we cover the button entirely. Command or Control T to bring up retransform. Commit that change, and then clip this using Command Option G, Control Alt G to that button. Now, all the other colors, I've already gone and clipped them using this same smart object. The way smart objects work is you can have your one smart object, and every other copy of that smart object is an instance of this one smart object. So if I change this smart object, every other copy of the smart object changes. Why is this valuable? Well, because if we just change the color of our master color, every one of these clipped colors that we have throughout the document will update automatically. Let's take it for a test drive. How do we change the color? Well, a couple things we can do, but I think the easiest way is just to double click on master color's thumbnail, and here we have a shape layer. How do you change the color of a shape layer? Well, you simply double click the thumbnail just like that. And let's say we want to make this, we want to go with a light blue instead of that kind of pale pasty red, and then we would just hit Command or Control S to save, Command or Control W to close, and everything across our interface updates because this smart object has simply been copied and stretched out and clipped to all of these other shapes that have some kind of color. The client says, hey, I don't like the blue, I want yellow. Hey, no problem. We go and select this. We can go, I'm going to go with a little bit more of a light orange because yellow, straight yellow can be kind of oppressive on the eyes. And there we go. We update everything. It's that fast and easy. It's so super incredibly, amazingly fast. It's a really great trick to have in your back pocket. So just don't forget to take advantage of all the amazing things you can do with smart objects, and this is just one of them. But if you do UI, website, branding, something where you have multiple things that are just need to be the same color, and if the client decides you need to change the color, they all need to be updated very quickly. This is a great way, if you're doing this in Photoshop, to have that sort of global color that you have in Adobe Illustrator here in Photoshop as well. All right, let's jump back over to our Paris image here. I'm going to get rid of the graphics that we just had. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to drag out a model that I have up here from Adobe Stock. I'm going to drag her out, place her in the middle of my document, commit the change. I'm going to go select all, and I'm just going to align her horizontally and vertically, and Command or Control D to deselect. I'm going to collapse my libraries panel, and I'm going to drag my adjustments panel up there so it's not quite as large. Now what I want to do is just run through a very quick, basic double usage of select and mask, because she has a lot of straight, clean lines for her body and her arms, and then her hair is, she's a lioness, for crying out loud. She has a mane going on up there. So we'll take advantage of the new select subject. We'll go select and choose subject, and Photoshop will try to pick her out as best it can, and it'll do a decent job because she's got nice contrast between her and the edges, so we don't even need to use the quick selection tool. And then what I would do at this point is go select and choose select and mask. Now there's a couple things here. We have her over a background, so we could use the on layers background, but I think to begin with, I want to go with the red overlay, and then we'll check it out on layers in just a moment. So I'm going to zoom in here, and what I'm looking for is just the edges. We're going to focus, ignore her hair for a second. We'll come back and mess with the hair later. I want to focus on the edges of her dress, her arms, things like that, and then there are these areas in here, which I'm not going to take the time to go. You really would have to go in and manually paint them out, but we can do that another time. This tutorial is all about the edges. So the first thing I'm noticing here is these edges they're kind of chunky, they're kind of rough, right? Not so good. So I'm going to go ahead first and smooth them out a bit and just wait until they look kind of right. Like that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to go ahead and increase the feather to the point where it looks like I'm kind of doing some damage, right? We're really messing things up. And then I'm going to begin increasing the contrast of the edge and just really tighten the edge up. It'll really help us take advantage of that smoothing while still giving us a pretty realistic edge. And then I can shift the actual edge itself too and just trim away any kind of sort of fringing that we're getting. We're getting a little bit of fringing here that I don't like, but we can clean that up in a little bit using another trick that I'll be more than happy to show you here in just a moment. And again, we're going to ignore the hair for a moment. We'll come back and take care of the hair in a separate pass. I'm going to choose to output this to a layer mask, so we're going to maintain the layer we have. I'm going to go new layer with layer mask because we're going to be doubling up this select and mask effect, and here I'll hit OK. So you can see if I back out, we actually have a nice selection around her. Again, if we ignore these bits here underneath her arms, but I'm just not going to take the time. I would just manually paint those out. Same thing here between her hands. I'll show you an example where I've already done that, but for now, for the sake of time, we're not going to do that here. But you can see we have a nice edge that looks pretty realistic. We get a little semi-opaqueness there on the edges, and just it's generally looking pretty decent. So now what I'll do, I'm going to drag her up on top. I'm going to turn her back on here, and once more, we're going to do basically the same exact thing. We're going to go select. We're going to select the subject, and we're going to go select and choose select the mask. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to shut her off underneath because I want to get a true idea of what I'm doing, especially if I'm going to use that on layers view. I don't want this layer with all the messed up hair distracting me. We'll mask away that messed up hair later. We're going to go select now and choose select and mask. And here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ignore the dress. I'm going to focus. This one is all about her hair. We want to get a reasonably decent edge up here on her hair. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my refinement brush, and you can use your square bracket keys to make the brush bigger or smaller. I generally like my brush to be just larger than the edge that I'm painting over. I find that it just gives me a more accurate, just a more accurate reading. It gives Photoshop enough information, but not so much that you're confusing it. So I'll just paint over all these areas of white, as you can see here, bring back some of the hair that needs to be brought back, and continue getting rid of the stuff that needs to be gotten rid of. I'll probably make the brush a little bit smaller up here for this part of her head, and then as I come around here, I'll make this a little bit larger. We'll make sure we clean that out there, and then here, basically anywhere where I see all this white left behind by the background, right? We want to make sure we clean up that stuff. That we obviously don't want to be there in our final piece. Even here in by her neck, we'll just paint over that stuff, try to knock that hole in there. Here where we have some white showing through the hair, again, knock a hole in that as well. And then we'll bring this around, clean this up a little bit. Now right down here, this is where you kind of have to play with the refine brush. The color of her dress, pretty close to the color of the background. So Photoshop could do one of two things. It could mistake the dress for background and start getting rid of some of the dress, or it could say, you've got the dress there, we want to keep that, so we want to keep this a little bit here. So I'll make my brush a little bit smaller here and just really focus on the hair area and not and really basically just try to stay away from the dress entirely. So not a perfect selection, but much better than it would have been had we accidentally sampled or gone over the dress in any meaningful way. All right, I want to zoom in just a little bit more. At this point, we might want to choose our layers view, on layers view, I should say. And you can see it still doesn't look 100% great. So we're going to tick on decontaminate colors. Now, decontaminate colors is pretty effective, but it's also really frustrating. And I kind of have this love-hate relationship with it where I feel like I'm always learning a little bit more how to use it. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is you get this really hard edge. You see that edge like along her hair where it goes from looking totally normal to very bad, right? And it's not faded together. It's not blended at all. It's just this sharp, harsh cutoff. Well, you can kind of ease that by just dialing back the amount, right? And I kind of dial back the amount of decontaminate edge until it looks passable, not on these edges out here. I can clean those up a little bit more, but rather when it starts looking passable here on like this part of her hair, we're not getting any kind of straight lines. So I'll keep messing with it. See there? The straight line just came up again. Can you see that? See how there's a difference between the hair like right there and the hair here going to the edge of her head? There's a difference, and it's kind of noticeable. So I'm going to knock that down to about 55. There we go. That's probably about right. And we will output this to a new layer with layer mask, not a new document. And I'm going to hit OK. I'm not going to mess with any global refinements, by the way. And here I'm going to hit OK. We got a new layer. I'm going to save this third copy of her because we're going to use that in a moment. Now what I'll do is turn her on underneath, and you can see how this looks obviously really bad because we have all of that extra hair. So what I'll do is I'm going to select the bottom, and I'm going to call this dress selection because that's all we want that mask to do. And this here is going to be our hair selection. So we're going to do the hair selection up here. What I'm going to do is go down to the dress selection here, and I'm going to just begin painting with black until I see all this bad stuff go away. So I'm going to grab my brush tool, make sure I have the mask selected, hit the letter D, so black and white are my foreground, background colors. There we go, I'm painting with that. And now I'm just going to begin painting with black and just paint away the edges. Really, it doesn't matter if we paint away all this stuff because all we do is just ensure that if there's some area for some reason where her skin has a hole in it or something, it's automatically going to be patched. But see, like that stuff there, just get rid of that. Allow our more complex hair selection to just shine right on through. And what we'll be able to do here with the hair mask, I would now select the mask that's going to be doing the hair, and I'm going to set my brush to the blend mode of soft light, and probably reduce the opacity a little bit, and then just paint over this and get rid of anything that is kind of not looking right. Like if there's anything that looks a little bit too light, is distracting, just go through and knock it out. And even you can set this to the blend mode normal, and like right there, that big loop-de-loo of hair, kind of distracting, and maybe even that's all distracting too. You can just go in and get rid of something like that. So we can just paint that bit away. Even this little one piece of hair out here, we can paint that away. And again, it's all up to you and your judgment, what you think looks best. But have fun with it and just, look and see what looks right. That kind of cleans up the selection a lot for us, I think, and we're able to get a really nice selection. Now, what I'll probably do with my foreground selection here is I'll paint black over all this dressy area. So I'm going to grab my brush once more. I'm going to make sure the opacity is set back to 100%, and I'm just going to paint away all of this stuff down here, just mainly because if there is something that's messing up the edge, oh, let me undo that. I painted away some of her hair. If there is something that happens to be messing up the edge or just building up some kind of fringing on the edge, I don't want that to be there. And speaking of fringing on the edge, if you do have fringing like this stuff over here, right, where that's a noticeable fringe right along there, we can select the dress selection mask, grab our brush tool, and again, this would be an area where I would go with that soft light blend mode, and maybe make my brush a little smaller using the square bracket keys, and just paint that fringe right away, right? It's a really nice controllable way to work with getting rid of something like this. So there we go, paint that right away. Maybe I'll boost this up a little bit, and paint that away on the arm there. That's really nice. Great. And, just go through anywhere where you see fringing that you need to get rid of. It's really, really easy to get rid of it just using a soft light brush. And in this case, I'm painting with black because I want to make it go away. If you're looking to bring the edge out a little bit more, well, just paint with white. Just the exact opposite, and it looks great either way. So those are some brush tricks and select the mask tricks and ways to use double masks to get a more complex selection and make it look pretty good. Again, I'm OCD about this stuff, but try to forget about the little bits showing through. Let's bring up another copy of her, and what I'm going to do here is change the color of her dress because the final tip here, and this is actually a sixth and bonus tip, we're going a little bit over, but I want to show you how to change the color or colorize an object that is white, like her dress. I'm going to come over here to the channels panel, and I have this here, and this is a pre-made selection, and you can see it's just going to select her dress. Looks really beautiful like that, doesn't it? I'm going to Command or Control click on that alpha channel. I'm going to shut it off, make sure I have selected the RGB composite layer. You can create your selection just like we just did with select and mask and tweak and adjust it as much as you like. And all I'm going to do here is add a hue saturation adjustment layer. So I can shut this layer off, and I'm just going to place a hue saturation adjustment layer. And what I'm going to do here is, number one, tick on colorize, because it is something that's white. In theory, it doesn't have any color. And I'm going to color her dress blue. So I'm going to go 235 in the hue department. You can see we're already getting some blues in there, but we really need to kind of bring this out a little bit more. I'm going to boost the saturation way up to like 75. You can see getting even more blue. And then I'm going to reduce the brightness to something like -40. So now we're really getting this blue, or is it purple? I have a really difficult time seeing blues and purples. It almost looks purple to me. So we've changed the color, but the problem is it's very flat. We're losing a lot of the texture and depth and kind of dynamicness of the dress she's wearing, because while it is just this kind of part of the beauty of the dress is its simplicity and the fact that it almost looks very flat, when we add this bluish color to it, it almost makes it look more flat. So we're going to help bring out more of that detail here by Command or Control clicking on the layer mask associated with our hue saturation adjustment layer and adding a levels adjustment layer. And here with levels, what I want to do is I want to just boost those shadows a little bit, push them up to about 20, and then I'm also going to open up the darker areas in the image, maybe about that much, something like that. And maybe I'll give it just a kiss of white as well, because, you know, why not? Next up, I'm going to choose the red channel, and here I'm just going to drag my middle point over to about 0.6, something like that. That'll work. I'm going to go to the green channel here. I'm just making some subtle color adjustments here. Go to the green channel. I'm going to pull this over till it's about, I don't know, 0.85 or so, something like that should be good. And then here for the blue channel, I am going to go and I'm going to drag this over to about 0.6 as well. And you can see what our levels adjustment layer is doing. It's adding a lot of richness back into that, but still not quite as much contrast as I want. So what I'll do is I will Command or Control click on my adjustment layer mask. I'm going to turn on the image right up here, and I'm just going to hit Command or Control J just to copy a copy of that dress. Okay, and I'm going to name this. I'm going to name this just contrast pump or something like that, because we're going to use this to pump a bunch of contrast back into this. Because it's already white, we don't need to desaturate, but maybe just on principle, we'll desaturate it. We can go Image Adjustments, Desaturate, and if there's a little tinge of yellow or something, then that'll go away. And we'll set this to the blend mode of Soft Light. So this is going to add a lot more contrast for our shadows and highlights here. And what we can do is just reduce the opacity of this and blend it all together until it works and looks just right. And the last thing we'll do here to kind of blend it all together is I'll just throw an adjustment layer here, a color lookup table, and let's go with the film stock 50 and just really blow the living daylights out of our contrast here. You can reduce the opacity a little bit if you don't like it, but I almost like that just way too much, almost an uncomfortable level of contrast. And if you really want to take it a step further, go to your background layer. We can go filter, and we can create a fake blur here by going with a field blur. And I'm going to drag a couple blur pinpoints out to the horizon. And to move this along a little faster, I'm going to shut off preview real quick. And I'll add a couple points up here near the top. I'm going to reduce these in terms of the blur. I'll reduce the blur of these down to, I don't know, 7 or 8, something like that. And once I have my blur reduced to about 8, I can just hold down my Alt or Option key and place a couple more points here in the foreground, and it'll automatically give me that 8 blur. I'm going to do the same thing here for the city, because I want the city to, basically I want the horizon to look like it's the point that's furthest away. That's sort of the optical illusion we're building. And once you have all that, you can just hit OK and give Photoshop a second. It'll go through and process your blur, and we'll see our effect here in just a moment. There you go, just like that. All right, so there you have it. That is the 5 tips and tricks, just all that stuff that we just covered in Photoshop. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, make sure you follow me over on Instagram. That's at tutvid is my Instagram handle. You can also, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel here so you never miss any video tutorials in the past, present, or future. And, if Discord is more your thing, discord.me/tutvid, where the conversation continues day after day, month after month, and year after year, eventually. Guys, for taking a look at smart objects and kind of changing global color with smart objects in that kind of crazy cool way that we did, changing rulers, messing around with select and mask, and just a bunch of different cool things you can do with Photoshop, which it's just full of cool things you can do with it. That's it. Get it, got it, good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials every day. Also, buy my course. It helps us do what we do, and this channel is supported by viewers just like you. You can also just click the thumbnail and watch another video from this channel. See you next time, guys.